Hey guys, what's up? Now earlier, of course, I read off a bit of my review, which I also posted and pasted. Not the video, of course, but well, maybe the video, but mostly the written portion at several places so people can read it themselves. But one thing that I think nobody is talking about is exactly basically the person that was behind this. You see, he's got his name credited to a couple of upcoming episodes really soon. I think he's credited to help out with the two-parter. He's credited to help out with the last episode, or at least he's credited of writing it. And like I said, he's getting credit for co-writing and co-helping out with the two-part finale, or the two-part semi-finale, as they call it. And I think he's got a couple of other episodes under his wing upcoming, or he's at least contributing to, and that's Josh Haber. Now, the reason I bring up Josh Haber is, he has his fans, he has his supporters and stuff, but the one thing that some fans were not too thrilled about when it came to this episode was the fact that a lot of continuity was kind of ignored. Some situations were kind of not acknowledged, something like that. I mean, there were continuity nods, don't get me wrong, but it's just that a lot of people felt that he overlooked certain things in the episode, like Rarity not knowing who Gabby is, Gabby the Griffin, not knowing who she is and all that, even though they met each other in the Fault in Our Cutie Marks. I can't. Let me kind of correct somebody on that. I think they may have encountered each other, but I think maybe you're thinking more along the lines of The Last Crusade, that they might have interacted, and that's about it. But as far as I know, this might be the first time they've ever really come face to face on a personal level kind of situation. But depending on how you feel about it. A lot of people just felt like there was some continuity. There were continuity nods, but there wasn't any. Basically, figure that out for yourself. Like, basically, there were and there weren't. And a lot of people looked at how Rarity reacted in this, and we all know that Rarity as a character, that if the story calls for it, she will get melodramatic, she will get overdramatic, she will, get obsessive, she will do this, she'll be the opposite of sometimes of what she's supposed to represent. So here, I think what really bothered a lot of fans with Rarity's Rarity's actions towards Spike hanging out with Gabby is the fact that he's hung out with other creatures before, he's hung out with other ponies before, and she's never reacted this way. And some people could say, well, the reason she never reacted that way towards those other times is because she knows these individuals. And she knows Smolder because Smolder's a student. She knows, of course she knows the CMCs because her sister's one of them. Of course, the rest of the main 7 or 8, if you will, if you count Starlight in there, and I do, honestly, is another. So all these other times, even, hanging out with Big Mac and Discord, she's never really had a problem. And that's the one thing people point out, is she's never really had a problem. Heck, he's even hung out one time and helped solve a friendship problem for Lyra and Bonbon. So it's like, basically to a lot of fans, and I am doing this on the fly and unscripted, but basically a lot of fans feel like all of a sudden she's obsessively jealous that Spike's hanging out with a new friend, that he's expanding his horizons and finding other ponies and creatures that may share his common interest and he can hang out with. Now all of a sudden she's developed an obsessive, possessive jealousy attitude, unlike what we've seen before. When she could have easily done this all the other times. I think that's one thing that really bothered a lot of fans. I mean, yes, the the silver lining at the end of it was the fact that, she, as a result, we got all this comedic gold when it came to the facial expressions, and her going beyond any facial expressions she's ever gone before. But it's like, really, she's suddenly getting this over obsessively jealous and possessive or whatever over a friend that she has known has had feelings for her, and now suddenly she's starting to act jealous when she's never done it before. I mean, I think that's the one thing that bothered a lot of fans, was the fact that she was acting not so much out of character, but mostly more so than ever, especially when it came to Spike. Like I said, when it came to Spike hanging out with somebody else. Now, some could argue that, maybe she didn't know Gabby as well as some people would assume she knows her, or at least she got to know her in other episodes. So maybe Gabby's involvement and introduction to Rarity was something new. But still, it's like, the one thing I believe a lot of fans did not like about this was her behavior. Yes, like I said, the silver lining is comedically we had some great facial expressions. But overall, it's more along the lines of they weren't too thrilled at the fact that all this time Spike's hung out with other creatures, male and female, and now Rarity's acting out of jealousy. Rarity's acting persuasive, acting obsessive. It's like, what's going on here? And one fan on DeviantArt did a review of the episode, and they said that they didn't have an issue, honestly, with Rarity's behavior, despite others having it. The issue they had was with Spike, and how Spike kept just blowing her off. Like, she's talking, and she's like, do 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 do. He's not listening until she has to literally scream at the top of her lungs to get his attention. And it's like, to this individual, that's not like Spike. Spike usually, where he's, calling for him or wanting to talk to him, he'll pay attention to her. He's more attentive to not just Rarity, but to the other characters. So for him to act this way seemed out of character, out of left field. The same with Rarity. Now, the question is, the question I think anybody has with Josh Haber penning this story is, why did he do it in such a way? Why did he do it in such a way that basically somewhat ignored a lot of what made the Sparity ship unique, if you will? What happened? What's going on here? It's like, if you're going to close the chapter or bring the Sparity arc to a conclusion somehow in a satisfying way, a lot of fans felt that this was not the best way to do it. Now, as I said in my thing, and I'll read it here. As I said here, this is an episode that basically has different, this is what I said. I said, episodes like this have different points of view given to them, from the Brony and Pegasus community. And what I meant by that was the fact that you have fans, as I said in there, and I kind of read about it in my video, you have fans that look at this episode and believe it finally, put to rest the whole Sparity deal, and now Spike's moved on from his crush. He's grown out of it. Some, like the one fan that did a review on DeviantArt, feel it reinforced it, or as one fan on the MLP forums at one time said, strengthened it. There are others that, look at this episode and the way it portrayed Rarity and somewhat of Spike, and feel that it shouldn't have belonged in this season at all. And some will look at it from the perspective of, hey, it gives Spike a new love interest. It gives him a new potential waifu, if you will, in Gabby. So this episode has that kind of a vibe to it, that it could be viewed from different points of view. And and honestly, nobody's going to agree with how they view the episode. No one's going to agree that, yeah, you're right, it does strengthen and reinforce Sparity, or yeah, you're right, it does end the ship, or yeah, you're right, it shouldn't belong in this season, or yeah, you're right, it does give, Spike a potential new waifu / ship tease and all that. And, that's fine. Everybody has their own opinion. But honestly, I think the one issue fans have with this episode, and they've had it with other episodes similar to this, is continuity. In fact, some fans even brought up the fact that with the best gift ever, and even I've brought this up, you have Spike going out of his way to find Rarity the perfect gift, or the best gift ever, and the end result is him singing a song to her, basically his portion of the true gift of giving, in a romantic / love ballad kind of manner that results in her not only putting her hoof over her heart, but you see stars / sparks in her eyes, a la Lady from Lady and the Tramp, which is something associated when it comes to romance. So, and people point out that episode was written by Michael Vogel, if you will. So that's the one thing I think a lot of fans also have an issue with. Like, if you're going to put a cap on Sparity in the final season, that you shouldn't be doing it in this manner. That you should be sticking to continuity, which there are continuity nods, but sticking to the continuity that basically focuses on this ship. I mean, the fact that you have Spike be shocked at the fact that Rarity misses him being around, you could probably say that's kind of new to Spike because he never knew that Rarity felt the same way about him. But if you look at it from a continuity perspective, had they stayed true to what you saw in Best Gift Ever and all that, it's basically a lot of fans feel that it would have been better if maybe there was some kind of understanding. Like maybe have Gabby kind of read and kind of see what's going on and why Rarity's acting this way, and maybe have her acknowledge, look, I'm not trying to steal Spike from you. If you truly feel about Spike the way I believe you do, I'm not trying to take him away from you. I just found a friend that I have a lot in common with. Just like I'm sure you have friends you have a lot in common with. Have some kind of, understanding moment like that. Basically, I think the overall reaction to this episode is very mixed. I mean, it's kind of like, I would say it's one of those 50-50 episodes to where you like it and you don't like it. So, it's just one of those situations to where some fans feel that you could have done it better, that it's a good episode, but there are some things that could have been tweaked to make it a little bit better, maybe stay in continuity. And there are others that just felt it didn't belong in it, and it represented characters like Spike and Rarity, and by all purposes, Gabby the Griffin, in ways they shouldn't be represented. And, and that leaves a big question as well. We know the show's coming to an end. And we know that when certain writers tackle certain episodes, especially in recent seasons, they'll always find a way to connect that episode through continuity to other episodes they've done. So my question to anybody is this. If Mike Vogel was the one that had taken over the writing for this episode, had done the writing for Dragon Dropped, do you think, honestly, he would have been more continuity based around what we saw in Best Gift Ever, and kind of have that be brought up here more so than the other stuff, like the Griffins with cutie mark situation and all that from The Fault in the Cutie Marks. I wonder. What are your thoughts? Do you think he would have done a better job than Josh? I mean, again, not saying Josh Haber didn't do a decent job here, but there are people like Dark Horse KC. She basically begins her video review typing up the question, raising it up to the camera and saying, "What the hey was that, Haber?" Because even she looks at it from her point of view of, what kind of episode did you give us to close out the Sparity deal? This wasn't the episode we were expecting, And I think that's one, and I think that's where one time I mentioned in a video, and I think in one as well as typed it up. Basically, that's where the miscommunication comes in with the writers. There are writers that will reference continuity to other episodes they did not touch upon or did not write, but then there are times they won't. And Josh Haber, to many fans, he may have, in a meta way, acknowledged the Sparity deal and kept it wide open, especially with the ending. And like I said, Pinky's line. Excuse me there. But overall, it's like, it's like, hey, to a lot of fans like Dark Horse KC, it's like, Haber, what are you doing? It's like, Spike and Rarity have a thing going, right? We the people agree with it or they don't. So why are you suddenly doing this? Why are you suddenly doing this meta-like, Easter egg-like episode where the core, like I said in my video, the core element of the friendship lesson is sharing friends, especially very close friends, and letting them hang out with others that they may have more in common with besides just you. And you're basically using that as a cover for the meta lesson or the meta core of the story, which is basically, as some people pointed out, a romantic love triangle, which leaves the door open still for Sparity to be a reality. I mean, pretty much the ending indicates it's going to be, and maybe that perhaps there's an understanding between Gabby and Spike that, hey, we're just pen pals, we're just friends, have a lot in common, nothing's going to come between, and that nothing's going to come between Spike and Rarity if something happens. Who knows? Maybe off screen when they flew off towards the end of the episode, Gabby probably asked him, why Rarity acted the way she did around them, or to get him, to win him over and all that. And maybe Spike can explain, well, I've had this crush on her, this thing for her. I did this for her at the last Heartwarming Eve that I think kind of opened her eyes and made her realize that, we're meant to be, kind of stuff. I don't know, but that's just mere speculation. The point is, basically, and I know I sound like I'm rambling, but the point is, when you got that ending, it kept the door open. And like this one fan on DeviantArt said, it's basically up to the interpretation of the viewer. And like I said in my review, that's the kind of episode it is. It's an episode that can be interpreted and viewed in different ways. Some can view it as finally putting an end to the Sparity deal. Some view it as reinforcing and strengthening it. Some view it as an episode that shouldn't belong in this season. And some view it as Spike potentially getting a new ship tease / waifu in Gabby the Griffin. But I think, honestly, the main issue fans had with it is basically the fact that the continuity felt a little off. Rarity's actions were beyond borderline opposite of what her element is supposed to represent, what she's supposed to represent as an element, that being generosity. Spike sometimes just blowing her off when normally he wouldn't blow off anybody. Stuff like that. And even Gabby the Griffin acting the way she did at times. It's more along the lines of, I think, they wanted to, honestly, this is my opinion. I think they wanted to address the episode, they wanted to address the Sparity deal, but they knew that they had to do it in a way that was, as I mentioned before, very meta. That basically, you knew in a sense, as a grown fan, as a grown adult, you had an understanding of exactly what they were going for here, but they did it in a way that, as Born Again Brony said at the MLP forums, felt more like a friendship situation instead of a romantic one, even though you could see what they were going for. And again, and I will admit, with Born Again Brony, got to give Josh Haber credit for doing that. But it's more along the lines, I think, what upset fans is the fact that you have one writer in Michael Vogel doing what he did for Best Gift Ever there, and now you have Josh Haber still continuing the tease of Spike and Rarity, doing it in a very meta way with this episode, but kind of almost ignoring what happened in Best Gift Ever. It's like now it's basically like to them, it's like what Spike did there doesn't matter, because now all of a sudden he's blowing off Rarity, the very female pony and unicorn love interest he's had since day one, that he dedicated a romantic / love ballad portion of the True Gift of Giving to. You know, in last year's special, last year's 8.5 season 8.5 epilogue Christmas special. It's like now all of a sudden you're gonna have him ignore her. It's like it didn't make any sense, and I think that was the issue. I think that was the main issue with this, is that it didn't make any sense from a continuity base. And honestly, I believe and I feel that some fans think and believe that if Mike Vogel would have helped out, maybe co-wrote it or even wrote it himself, with all due respect to Josh Haber, that he would at least kept that in continuity. Maybe have Rarity remind Spike of what he did for her during Heartwarming Eve. Who knows? But I think that's probably the issue. But again, the main issue I think with this was, you know, Josh Haber, with all due respect, probably not paying attention to the continuity that was needed. Now, I'm not saying he didn't do a good job. He did a great job. You know, he did a terrific job. But honestly, I think it's more along the lines of, how do I put this? Fans basically believe, or have the opinion, I should say, that have various opinions, I should say, that he at least should have acknowledged Best Gift Ever. He should have acknowledged the past moments that they've had with each other, not just through these, you know, flashbacks that were moments that we didn't see on screen, but basically off screen, and now we're seeing them on screen, kind of deal. But, you know, again, not just that, but you know, just, you know, stay in continuity, if you will, but also not have the characters act out the way they did, you know. And I think that's the main issue. It's like, there are those, like I said, there are those of an opinion, and I just thought I heard something out there. There are those of an opinion that believe that Josh Haber, as good of a writer as he is, should have stuck to the continuity, kind of had some kind of acknowledgement to what happened in Best Gift Ever and some other moments between Spike and Rarity to really further strengthen the situation here and why Rarity's acting the way she is. And as far as Rarity and Spike and Gabby go, not have them act out of character as much as they did. You know, with the way they were acting in this episode, like Spike blowing off Rarity. You know, Rarity acting so out of character, it's, you know, it's funny, but it's not really in her character that much, as much as it was here. I mean, we've seen it before, but not as much here. And then Gabby kind of showing a little bit of that Griffin-ness of trying to get Spike to herself as well. Or so some people have said. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people feel that if you're going to address this, it should have been done in a way that if you're going to go with this kind of story, at least have some kind of acknowledgement and maybe admittance, either on her own or maybe in secret, maybe a callback to the first episode, one of the first episodes in the first season, where Spike, you know, in secret admitted to the rest of the main six, Twilight included, that he has a thing for Rarity. Maybe do a callback and maybe have Rarity to herself, or maybe towards Twilight, kind of in secret, say, acknowledge that she kind of has feelings now for Spike more than just friendship or something. And maybe even tie that back to what Spike did for her in Best Gift Ever. That's all fans really wanted here, I think, was the continuity. It's like, okay, you want to make the characters kind of go out of character a bit, that's fine. But not to the extreme that they did. And at least have some kind of continuity nod to, what made this thing between Spike and Rarity so strong and personal, especially for someone like Rarity. But again, I think that's where the main problem with Friendship is Magic has always existed. It's the fact that there's mainly been times, I was checking something there, there's mainly been times where the story where an episode will happen, but it'll regress a character to a point that basically it takes whatever development they had in an episode prior, either within that same season or prior seasons, and just throw it out the window or ignore it. And then all of a sudden, the next episode that follows that episode, kind of reestablishes that development. It's like, if there's one thing about the series that's been a complaint about with some fans, depending on the situation and whoever's writing the stories, is the continuity. And here, this is probably one of the examples that fans talk about. I mean, yes, there are continuity nods to The Fault in Our Cutie Marks, but that's it. As well as, nods to the Power Ponies episode, Dungeons and Discords, you name it. But besides those being acknowledged, anything else basically got, not acknowledged, kind of, shelved. And I think that's what kind of bothered a lot of fans with this episode. Not saying it wasn't a good episode. I thought it was a good / decent episode, like I said in my review. But I think, honestly, in the end, all fans wanted was an episode that played on the Sparity continuity. That's about it. As well as, not make Rarity and even Spike and somewhat Gabby out of character the way they were. But I just thought I'd bring that up. I know I sound like I rambled a little bit, but I think that's an issue, like I said, that fans have with this episode. Some liked it, some didn't. It's one of those 50-50 deals. And like I said, it's one of those episodes that can be viewed from different points of view. Some fans feel, like I said, it got rid of Sparity. Some feel it reinforced and strengthened it. Some feel the episode didn't belong in this season. And some feel it gave Spike a new ship T / waifu, in Gabby. So that's basically... So basically, I just thought I'd come on here, and I know I sound, like I said, like I rambled a lot, but I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts, uncut and unfiltered, on why fans feel the way they do about this episode as a whole. So let me know what you guys think, though, down below. Comment if you like. This video, I know, has gone to about almost a half hour, so I do apologize. So take your time. Hopefully you guys take your time with this, but let me know what you guys all think about this whole situation with Dragon Dropped. Do you agree with anything that I said here? Do you believe that Josh Haber should at least, when it came to continuity, also included the Sparity continuity that we've had throughout the series as part of this, especially from Best Gift Ever? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think of maybe Michael Vogel should have been the one that did it, or at least co-wrote with Josh on this? What are you guys' thoughts of it? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Hopefully you've taken your time in watching this, and I will talk to you all later.